Well, Kay, I know you talk often about the human giver syndrome. Can
Right.
you talk to us about this? How can people recognize the habits and begin to heal with the human giver syndrome?
Sure. Okay. So human giver syndrome is a term that was coined just a few years ago, but it's actually been around for thousands of years. The term was coined by a woman named Kate Mann. She's a
Okay.
doctor of philosophy. And the book is called Down Girl. I think it was published in 2018. I've got a link to that actually on my sources page on my website.
Okay.
And basically what it is I'm paraphrasing here, but it is
Sure.
this belief that there are some people who, and these are the givers, who ought to be responsible for the success and the happiness and the comfort and the thriving of the people around us, no matter what it costs us. And we are supposed to be willing and happy to drain everything out of ourselves so that the people around us can have what they need and get what they need. What's important to know here is that human giver syndrome, if you identify with this the way I do, you haven't done something wrong. This is not a problem. You didn't do something to earn this. This is a syndrome in the sense of the wider society. So this is something that you inherited. It's something that I inherited, and I was designated to be a giver, basically simply because I was born female and still identify with being female. You know, in all of my roles, wife, mom, caregiver, I'm expected to be female. And a big part of human giver syndrome, at least in our culture, has to do with your gender identity. And there are, really anybody who would be underrepresented or a minority, much more likely to identify with being a human giver.
Okay.
And if you find yourself feeling resentful, always knowing that you're pouring everything out of yourself for somebody else's sake, if you find that you're in relationships where the expectation is that you will jump every time somebody around you needs something, those are some really good indicators that you probably are being identified as a human giver, whether or not you know this is going on or knew it was going on beforehand. And those are some things to really pay attention to, because what it means is you're probably putting yourself last in most situations. And look, I myself identify very closely with this. I don't let it run my life anymore. Now that I've learned to be able to see it, I can behave in ways where I get to say to the people around me, I matter too. I'm important too. My sleep matters, right? A big one. If you find yourself not getting a good night's sleep because instead you are tending to everything else for everybody else, then that could be cleaning your house. That could be staying up late to take care of someone. That could be, going to bed at midnight or 1 a.m. because you really want to stay up and make the perfect cupcakes for somebody's classroom. Those are all the kinds of things we really do to try to prove ourselves that we're good enough givers. And it's a pretty vicious cycle. So I've been there many times.
So this almost sounds like people pleasing to me. Are these similar, Kay?
The behaviors of people pleasing, and I would also say the behaviors of perfectionism, because that's my personal poison. They look a lot alike, but when I look into myself, when I'm aware of what I'm doing, sometimes what I do, I'm sure looks like people pleasing. I happen to know that my motivation is perfectionism rather than people pleasing. So that's a little bit different. But, when you get rewarded for people pleasing behavior or perfectionistic behavior, that can line up with human giver syndrome. I see that so much. I see you nodding along there. Kelly, can you identify?
Yeah, I can identify with some of this, Kay. I feel like been there, done that. I think the older I get, I am getting better at saying no and getting better at setting boundaries. And it sounds like setting boundaries is a way to begin to heal from human giver syndrome. Would you say that's one way?
For sure.
To work through it?
It's setting expectations and setting boundaries. Now, of course, there is a lot more to it. And I just want to go on record saying setting expectations and setting boundaries is not easy to do, especially if you've lived most of your life without boundaries. Learning to do that is really, really hard. It is also the single fastest way to start taking better care of yourself and really start to push back against the expectations that come with human giver syndrome. So, learning to say no, that's pretty painful. And I don't actually know that it ever gets all that much easier. I mean, it's been something that I've had to learn to do. I mean, just in the last few years, a lot, especially during the pandemic when everybody was home with me. Yeah. But what I will tell you is that even if it doesn't get easier necessarily, you build the skills. So it's like weightlifting. You know, does it get easier to lift a heavy weight? I mean, I don't necessarily know that it gets easier, but it becomes possible. And it's because you've got all the skills and all the training that you need so that when you walk up to that barbell, you can lift it when you need to. And that's kind of the way boundaries work too.
Right. It's like muscle memory, right?
Oh, for sure. It's muscle memory.
Train our bodies on how to do it. And so, the next time that opportunity comes up for us to say yes or no, we've had that experience already and we can set those expectations, set those boundaries.